In 1994, Forrest Gump seemed like a simple story of luck, kindness, and destiny. But decades later, the cast's real lives took very different turns. Some became millionaires, others vanished from Hollywood, and a few passed away almost unnoticed. Today, we uncover where they are now and how much they've truly changed in 2026. Tom Hanks as Forrest Gump. Tom Hanks was born on July 9, 1956, in Concord, California, United States. At 38 years old, he played Forrest Gump, a gentleman with limited intelligence whose sincerity quietly carries an entire generation in Forrest Gump, 1994. The role became the emotional spine of the film, turning simplicity into one of the most enduring forces in American cinema. That emotional restraint grew out of an unsettled childhood. After his parents divorced when he was 5, Hanks moved constantly with his father, living in a series of temporary homes that offered no lasting stability. This early dislocation taught him how to observe rather than dominate, a quality that later shaped his early screen presence in Splash and Big. Those performances revealed a man learning to turn personal uncertainty into emotional accessibility. As his professional standing strengthened, his private life carried its own weight. Hanks married actress Samantha Lewis in 1978, and they raised 2 children, Colin and Elizabeth, while his career accelerated through the 1980s. The marriage ended in 1987 under the strain of growing fame, and her death from bone cancer in 2002 left a permanent emotional scar. His marriage to Rita Wilson in 1988 introduced long-term stability, allowing him to sustain demanding projects such as Saving Private Ryan and Castaway without fracturing his family life. Years of physical transformation eventually took a toll. In 2013, Hanks revealed his diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, a condition intensified by extreme weight changes required by earlier roles. The diagnosis forced him to reassess how far he could push his body for performance. When he and Wilson contracted COVID-19 in early 2020, the experience reinforced the importance of balance over sacrifice. Today, at 70 years old, Tom Hanks remains active as an actor and producer, choosing projects selectively rather than relentlessly. His estimated net worth of $400 million reflects decades of consistency and trust rather than volatility. Robin Wright as Jenny Curran. Robin Wright was born on April 8, 1966 in Dallas, Texas, United States. At 28 years old, she played Jenny Curran, a woman driven by escape, damage, and unresolved longing in Forrest Gump, 1994. Her performance gave the film its emotional counterweight, grounding idealism in pain and contradiction. That emotional complexity had early roots. Wright's parents divorced when she was 2, leading to constant relocation and a childhood without a fixed sense of belonging. By 14, she was working internationally as a model, living alone in Paris and Japan, navigating adult pressure in isolation. When she transitioned into acting with Santa Barbara and later The Princess Bride, those early experiences shaped a screen presence defined by emotional distance. As visibility increased, her personal life unfolded under public scrutiny. Wright married actor Dane Witherspoon in 1986, divorcing 2 years later, before entering a long and turbulent relationship with Sean Penn. Their marriage in 1996 produced 2 children, Dylan and Hopper, but was marked by repeated separations, reconciliation attempts, and sustained media pressure. The divorce in 2010 closed a prolonged chapter of instability that echoed the emotional restlessness seen in many of her roles. Sustained stress eventually manifested physically. Wright later acknowledged living with chronic fatigue syndrome, a condition that disrupted her work rhythm and forced stricter boundaries. In response, she redirected her career toward greater creative control, stepping into directing and producing while continuing to command authority on screen through House of Cards. Now, at 60 years old, Robin Wright continues working selectively as an actress, director, and producer, prioritizing control over exposure. Her estimated net worth of $65 million reflects long-term creative autonomy rather than constant output. Her legacy endures through characters that resist easy redemption. Gary Sinise as Lieutenant Dan Taylor. Gary Sinise was born on March 17, 1955, in Blue Island, Illinois, United States. At 39 years old, he played Lieutenant Dan Taylor, a Vietnam War veteran stripped of purpose and rebuilt through rage and survival in Forrest Gump, 1994. The role gave the film its moral gravity, confronting loss, anger, and resilience in a way that reshaped how war trauma was portrayed on screen. That intensity was shaped early by movement and discipline rather than chaos. Sinise grew up in a family that relocated frequently due to his father's work as a film editor, forcing him to adapt socially while maintaining structure. He turned to theater in high school and by 18 co-founded the Steppenwolf Theater Company, committing to the stage long before mainstream recognition arrived. His early dedication later translated into disciplined performances in Of Mice and Men and Apollo 13. As his career expanded, his personal life remained centered on long-term commitment. Sinise married actress Moira Harris in 1981, and together they raised 3 children, while his work intensified across film and television. Their marriage endured decades of professional pressure, reinforcing his reputation. That stability became a foundation as his public identity grew beyond acting. Life tested that foundation through illness and loss. In 2018, Moira Harris was diagnosed with breast cancer, a battle she survived after treatment, reshaping the family's priorities. Far more devastating was the illness of their son, Max Sinise, who was diagnosed with chordoma, a rare spinal cancer, and died on January 5, 2024. His death profoundly altered Sinise's focus, deepening his commitment to service and remembrance. Today, at 71 years old, Gary Sinise continues working selectively as an actor, musician, and humanitarian. His estimated net worth of $40 million comes from acting, music, and philanthropic leadership rather than excess. Through the Gary Sinise Foundation and the Lieutenant Dan Band, his legacy now extends beyond performance, defined by service shaped through personal loss. Mykelti Williamson as Benjamin Buford, Bubba Blue. Mykelti Williamson was born on March 4, 1957, in St. Louis, Missouri, United States. At 37 years old, he played Benjamin Buford, Bubba Blue, Forrest Gump's loyal friend whose quiet dreams ended on a Vietnamese battlefield in Forrest Gump, 1994. The role became one of the film's most emotional turning points, transforming a brief character arc into lasting cultural memory. That sensitivity developed early through relocation and exposure. At 9, Williamson moved with his family to Los Angeles due to his father's military career, adjusting quickly to new environments while discovering performance as an outlet. He began acting and dancing young, balancing discipline with creativity, later appearing in projects like Wildcats and Free Willy that showed his ability to ground warmth and vulnerability in supporting roles. Career recognition followed, but typecasting lingered. While Forrest Gump defined his public image, Williamson continued building a varied resume through Chicago Hope, Ali, and Heat, consistently delivering depth even in limited screen time. Despite steady work, escaping the shadow of Bubba required persistence, forcing him to diversify into directing and stage work to maintain creative control. His personal life reflected repeated resets. Williamson married Olivia Brown in 1983, divorcing 2 years later, then married Cheryl Chisholm in 1989, a union marked by emotional strain and legal conflict after their separation. Stability arrived with his third marriage to Sandra Spriggs in 1997, with whom he raised 3 children, grounding him during periods of professional uncertainty. Now, at 69 years old, Mykelti Williamson remains active in film, television, and theater, working steadily rather than prominently. His estimated net worth of $5 million reflects longevity built on persistence rather than stardom. His legacy rests in quiet consistency. Sally Field, as Mrs. Gump. Sally Field was born on November 6, 1946, in Pasadena, California, United States. At 48 years old, she played Mrs. Gump, a fiercely protective mother whose moral certainty shapes her son's entire life in Forrest Gump, 1994. Her performance grounded the film emotionally, turning maternal devotion into its quiet moral compass. That strength was forged through deep personal damage. Field's parents divorced when she was 4, and her mother later married actor Jock Mahoney, who sexually abused her until the age of 14. The trauma left lasting psychological scars, later revealed in her memoir In Pieces. Even as she entered television with Gidget and The Flying Nun, the contrast between her cheerful screen image and private suffering created internal tension that pushed her toward more demanding dramatic work. As she matured professionally, those experiences translated into authority on screen. Field broke free from sitcom typecasting with Sybil and reached full dramatic recognition with Norma Ray and Places in the Heart, earning 2 Academy Awards. By the time she portrayed Mrs. Gump, her career carried decades of emotional discipline, allowing her to embody unconditional love without sentimentality. Later roles, such as Brothers and Sisters and Lincoln, reinforced her reputation for portraying women who endure rather than collapse. Her personal relationships reflected similar strain. Field married Stephen Craig in 1968 and had 2 sons before divorcing in 1975, then married Alan Greisman in 1984, with whom she had a 3rd son before their divorce in 1994. Between those marriages, her relationship with Burt Reynolds became publicly volatile, marked by emotional imbalance and long-lasting regret. These experiences deepened her resolve to protect her private life while continuing to work. Health challenges added another layer. Field was diagnosed with osteoporosis in 2005 and later became a public spokesperson for awareness and prevention. By 2026, at 80 years old, she remains an enduring presence in American culture, with an estimated net worth of $55 million built across film, television, and theater. Her legacy rests not on longevity alone, but on how personal trauma was transformed into performances of quiet, unbreakable resolve. Haley Joel Osment, as Forrest Gump Jr. Haley Joel Osment was born on April 10, 1988, in Los Angeles, California, United States. At just 6 years old, he played Forrest Gump Jr., the child who represents continuity, healing, and emotional closure in Forrest Gump, 1994. Though brief, the role gave the film its final emotional release, confirming that gentleness could be inherited rather than lost. That early exposure came with pressure. Osment began acting at age 4 through television commercials, growing up under constant scrutiny before forming a stable identity. As a child, he balanced school with professional work, appearing in family-oriented projects that demanded emotional maturity beyond his age. The discipline developed during these years later allowed him to deliver controlled, restrained performances rather than exaggerated childhood sentiment. As he entered adolescence, the weight of early fame intensified. Osment became a global sensation with The Sixth Sense, earning an Academy Award nomination, followed by AI, Artificial Intelligence, which confirmed him as one of the most respected child actors of his generation. These performances, however, made the transition to adult roles more complex, forcing him to navigate expectations shaped by extraordinary early success. Personal difficulties surfaced during that transition. In 2006, Osment was involved in a serious car accident that resulted in physical injuries and a highly publicized DUI charge, leading to probation and mandated rehabilitation. Years later, further setbacks followed, including the loss of his home in the 2025 California wildfires and a 2025 arrest related to substance possession, after which he entered court-ordered treatment and recovery programs. Today, at 38 years old, Haley Joel Osment continues working steadily in film, television, and voice acting, particularly in animation and game franchises. His estimated net worth of $10 million reflects a career rebuilt through persistence rather than momentum. Michael Connor Humphreys, as young Forrest Gump. Michael Connor Humphreys was born on March 1, 1985, in Independence, Mississippi, United States. At 9 years old, he played young Forrest Gump, the childhood version whose accent, gait, and innocence defined the character's core in Forrest Gump, 1994. The performance shaped the film's authenticity so completely that Tom Hanks modeled his adult portrayal on Humphreys' natural mannerisms. That sudden visibility arrived without preparation. Raised in a small southern town, Humphreys' life changed after an open casting call led to instant recognition, replacing anonymity with media attention. The experience was brief but formative, and while he did not pursue continuous child stardom, the role's imprint followed him. Years later, returning briefly to performance in Pathfinders, In the Company of Strangers reflected a quieter, more reflective engagement with storytelling. Instead of remaining in Hollywood, he chose a different path. In 2004, Humphreys enlisted in the U.S. Army as an infantryman, serving 18 months in Iraq with frontline units. Military life demanded discipline and resilience far removed from film sets, and combat exposure left lasting psychological impact, including PTSD, reshaping his relationship with public life and performance. Service brought its own costs. After returning home, he faced the long process of adjustment, carrying memories that contrasted sharply with the innocence audiences remembered. His later involvement in the stage production If All the Sky Were Paper, centered on soldiers' letters, marked a meaningful intersection between lived experience and art, allowing expression without spectacle. Now, at 41 years old, Michael Connor Humphreys lives largely outside the entertainment industry, keeping a low public profile. His estimated net worth of $500,000 reflects a short acting career followed by years of service and private life. His legacy remains singular. A child performance so defining it shaped an icon, then quietly stepped away. Hannah R. Hall as young Jenny Curran. Hannah R. Hall was born on July 9, 1984, in Denver, Colorado, United States. At 10 years old, she played young Jenny Curran, a fragile child navigating fear and isolation in Forrest Gump, 1994. Her portrayal introduced the emotional origins of Jenny's later pain, anchoring the character's arc with unsettling realism. That role arrived early amid displacement. Hall's family moved into the mountains when she was 2, and she grew up away from industry centers before being cast through an open call. Early attention brought pressure alongside opportunity, and she continued acting through childhood, later appearing in The Virgin Suicides, where her quiet intensity stood out and proving she could carry emotionally heavy material. As she grew older, the transition proved difficult. Hall trained formally at Vancouver Film School, seeking control over craft rather than momentum. Roles in projects like Halloween demonstrated range, but steady reinvention remained elusive, a common challenge for performers introduced to audiences too young to redefine themselves easily. Professional uncertainty eventually led to a change in direction. Hall stepped back from mainstream acting, exploring theater and later working as a feline behavior specialist, a life choice far removed from Hollywood's expectations. Occasional television appearances kept her connected to performance without returning to constant exposure. Today, at 42 years old, Hannah R. Hall maintains a private, unconventional career path. Her estimated net worth of $400,000 reflects selective work rather than prolonged visibility. Her story endures through one unforgettable childhood performance that explained, rather than excused, a character's lifelong wounds. Siobhan Fallon Hogan, as school bus driver. Siobhan Fallon Hogan was born on May 13, 1961, in Syracuse, New York, United States. At 33 years old, she played the school bus driver, the sharp, dismissive gatekeeper of childhood cruelty in Forrest Gump, 1994. The brief role became instantly memorable, distilling social exclusion into a few biting lines that audiences never forgot. That edge was shaped early. Raised in a large Irish Catholic family with 5 siblings, Hogan grew up surrounded by discipline, humor, and strong moral structure. Her upbringing emphasized education and faith, pushing her toward performance. She trained rigorously and developed character-driven stage work that later fed into her distinct screen presence. Her career gained momentum through television, especially Saturday Night Live, where timing and restraint became her trademarks. Film roles in Men in Black and Holes expanded her visibility, but the real shift came when she stepped into darker material like Dancer in the Dark and Dogville. These performances proved she could move from comedy to moral unease without losing credibility. Marriage provided stability rather than scandal. Hogan married Peter Hogan in 1992, and together they raised 3 children, Bernadette, Peter, and Sinead, away from Hollywood's center. Family life anchored her choices, even as it limited certain opportunities, reinforcing her preference for selective, values-driven work. Today, at 65 years old, Hogan continues writing, producing, and acting, focusing on faith-centered and character-first films, such as Rushed and Shelter in Solitude. Her estimated net worth of $5 million reflects consistency rather than excess, built on decades of disciplined craft and principled decisions. Sam Anderson as Principal. Sam Anderson was born on April 2, 1947, in Clark, South Dakota, United States. At 47 years old, he played the school principal, the rigid authority figure enforcing conformity in Forrest Gump, 1994. His presence captured institutional indifference, reinforcing the obstacles Forrest faced before finding his own path. That authority grew from structure. Raised in Wahpeton, North Dakota, Anderson pursued academics alongside performance, earning advanced degrees in literature and creative writing. Before acting full-time, he taught drama, shaping his understanding of character psychology and restraint, skills that later defined his on-screen roles. Television became his strongest arena. Long-running appearances in Perfect Strangers and Growing Pains established him as a master of controlled antagonism, while later work in Lost and Angel showed his ability to bring intelligence and quiet menace to ensemble casts. Each role built on credibility rather than visibility. His personal life remained steady. Anderson married Barbara Ann Hancock in 1985, and their long marriage produced 2 children, offering continuity rarely visible in the industry. This stability mirrored his career, less explosive, more enduring, built on reliability. Today, at 79 years old, Sam Anderson remains active, including recent work in the Matlock reboot. His estimated net worth of $5 million reflects a lifetime of consistent employment, proving that longevity in Hollywood can come from precision rather than prominence. Peter Dobson as young Elvis Presley. Peter Dobson was born on July 19, 1964, in Red Bank, New Jersey, United States. At 30 years old, he played young Elvis Presley, the electrifying television cameo voiced by Kurt Russell in Forrest Gump, 1994. Though brief, the scene injected cultural shock into the film, turning a historical icon into a moment of myth-making. Dobson grew up in Middletown Township, in a household shaped by contrast, with a contractor father and an activist mother encouraging independence. His early environment favored discipline over indulgence, and acting emerged through formal training. By the time he entered the industry, he carried a seriousness that set him apart from disposable leading men. That foundation paid off quickly. Early film work in Sing and Last Exit to Brooklyn established credibility, while television exposure followed soon after. After Forrest Gump, Dobson expanded into genre material with The Frighteners and later Drowning Mona, maintaining steady visibility without becoming typecast. As opportunities shifted, he moved behind the camera. Writing, directing, and producing became central to his later career, allowing creative control that acting alone could not provide. Projects like Choose Life and White Mule reflected a deliberate pivot towards storytelling rather than celebrity. By 2026, at 62 years old, Peter Dobson continues working selectively in film development and production. His estimated net worth of $3 million reflects a career built on adaptability, briefly embodying one of America's greatest legends, then choosing longevity over exposure. Afemo Omilami as drill sergeant. Afemo Omilami was born on December 13, 1950 in Petersburg, Virginia, United States. At 44 years old, he played the drill sergeant, the voice of discipline and authority shaping Forrest's military transformation in Forrest Gump, 1994. The role reinforced the film's passage from innocence to order with sharp efficiency. Unlike many actors, Omilami entered the profession later in life. His early years remain largely private, but his late start brought focus rather than hesitation. When he arrived on screen, he carried weight, projecting credibility that could not be taught quickly. His career developed through serious, grounded projects. Appearances in Glory and The Firm positioned him within morally complex narratives, while Bringing Out the Dead later showcased his ability to inhabit tension without exaggeration. Each role reinforced his reputation as a dependable character presence. Stability defined his personal life. Omilami married Elizabeth Omilami in 1985, and their long-standing partnership produced 2 children. The marriage endured alongside his career, providing balance uncommon in an industry driven by volatility. Today, at 76 years old, Afemo Omilami remains respected for his body of work across film and television. His estimated net worth of $1 million reflects consistency rather than spectacle. Sonny Shroyer as college football coach. Sonny Shroyer was born on August 28, 1935, in Valdosta, Georgia, United States. At 59 years old, he played the college football coach, the authoritative figure guiding Forrest's unexpected rise on the field in Forrest Gump, 1994. Though short, the role anchored the college football chapter with Southern authenticity and quiet authority. He grew up deeply rooted in the American South, where football was not entertainment, but identity. Shroyer earned a scholarship to Florida State University, yet a serious injury abruptly ended his athletic future. That forced turn away from sports pushed him toward performance, a transition that reshaped his life after he completed his studies at the University of Georgia. Acting began indirectly through modeling in the early 1960s, but momentum came later. Film roles in Payday and Smokey and the Bandit built visibility, while television changed everything. His portrayal of Enos Strait on The Dukes of Hazzard turned him into a national face, and the spin-off series Enos briefly placed him at the center of network television. Away from the screen, his personal life remained steady. Shroyer married Paula Shroyer in 1953, and together they raised 2 sons, Chris and Mark. While his career fluctuated between prominence and quiet stretches, the marriage endured, grounding him through fame, cancellation, and eventual retreat from Hollywood. In later years, he continued appearing in selective roles such as Ray and The Way Home before retiring in 2023 due to health complications following flu-related illness. Now, at 91 years old, Sonny Shroyer's estimated net worth stands at $500,000, reflecting a career defined less by wealth than by longevity, cultural imprint, and Southern character authenticity. Time changes faces, voices, and destinies, but some stories never fade. From unforgettable innocence to lives shaped by loss, resilience, and survival, the Forrest Gump cast has walked paths no one could predict. So now the question is, which transformation shocked you the most in 2026? If you enjoyed this journey through time, leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe for more then and now stories. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss how Hollywood legends truly changed.